So, have you ever played a game that was competent but not outstanding? If you never played such a game, well, this is Acid Nimbus. Acid Nimbus is a good, entertaining, and well-made game, but I just have a few really small complaints. But first, what is Acid Nimbus? It's pretty much a very good example of how a 2.5D arcade shooter should look like. Controls, tight. Music, tighter. Pixel art, super tight. Difficulty, well, story, what are we talking about again? You see, this is pretty much what I would call a low-scope, competent game. This game does implement the 2.5D arcade shooter mechanics almost perfectly. WASD or arrow keys to move, mouse to aim, left click to fire, and right click to dash. This is a good thing. The implementation is, like I said, near perfect. No input lag, very responsive, intuitive to use, even for someone who never played this kind of game. It's kind of weird to praise the correct implementation of mechanics, but in the indie scene, and especially in low-scope games, it's sometimes not as prevalent as in mainstream or AAA games. The gameplay loop is also very simple to grasp. You start with one accessible level and you have to reach 3,500 points to unlock the next stage and new weapons. The stages themselves are literally squares with boundaries that when crossed will lead to immediate game over. Very much like other arcade shooters I know. Every arena has a theme that is represented with fitting visuals, music, and to a certain extent gameplay. The only task you are really given is basically to reach those 3,500 points to unlock the next stage. It is not very difficult, but I think that was the intention. The game wants to open up quickly and give you new stages and weapons to prevent you from getting bored of the repetition. They should be able to unlock everything in the game under half an hour. The challenge actually comes from the achievements, and for those who don't know me, I think you only finish the game when you got every available achievement there is in the game. So let me tell you about those. There are basically 9 achievements for every level 1, and it consists of just getting 10,000 points. And getting those 10,000 points is not easy. It is doable, but not easy. Let's step back a little and start with the menu. Here we have a pretty standard menu. Some nice menu art, idle animation on the left bottom of the screen, and everything else you would expect like level select, start, quit, and options. There's also a bestiary button, but we will talk about that later. The tutorial is in the menu bar itself, even though it would fit more as a level to select. Just a small thing that bothers me and will come up later. Since I'm also reviewing the DLC, the game has also a cosmetic options in the menu bar, which consists of 3 sets of clothes for the main character. It's nice to have those cosmetics and everything looks great, but it doesn't make or break the experience. It's just a good addition to a solid game. Unfortunately, the option menu is lacking since you can toggle between full screen and window mode, but you can only resize the window by dragging its borders. Not the best way to resize the window. Again, doesn't make or break the game, but still not the best looks. As we would expect from a competent game, you can adjust the master and environmental sounds individually. Kudos to that, because a lot of indie games forget that there are 2 types of sounds. I think I covered all the basics, and since the game doesn't have a tight structure, because it opens up quickly, gives you new weapons and only the achievements, I'm going to move from level to level, figuring out their difficulty, how well they play individually, and how they fit together. The tutorial. I'm going to use this level to explain the base mechanics once and why I think certain design choices were made, and I'm going to refrain describing everything in every consecutive level again, except if the level changes something up, obviously. It is a basic tutorial. What do you expect? It teaches you to walk, shoot, and die. The only difference from a typical 2.5D arcade shooter is the reload mechanic, because you don't reload really. You have an ammo bar instead of an ammo clip, and to refill this bar you have to stand on a puddle of yellow goo. It takes a second until the refill process kicks in, which will lead to problems later on. The game calls these yellow puddles acid, but this would mean the protagonist and her clothes are immune to acid and she can absorb it somehow. I don't know, it's possible since the game is ambiguous about its own world, It just sounds weird, I don't really like it. Why not call it liquid energy or something like that? The game implemented a good method to quickly come back to the main menu. Just press H and you are back to the main menu. This game actually benefits from this command since it's pretty convenient and fast to just press H instead of escape and then go back to main menu. You can't do that, by the way, only when you die, which is the negative part of the whole thing. Let's move on to level numero uno, the Pumpkin Forest. The first time you start a level, you will be greeted by a written tutorial that explains the rules that I mentioned earlier, and it gives you hints on how you should be able to quote-unquote beat the level. These tutorials can be brought back with the mysterious reset tip buttons from the menu. These tips are kind of useful, but I didn't really need them and they should have only contained the tips. Instead, they contain the whole game explanation again. It seems pretty much like a copy and paste job and an overkill at the same time. So, every level starts with you in the top left corner of the stage with a yellow goo puddle next to you, also known as Acid Puddle, with a description of what it is and what it does. The rules and controls are also next to you on the ground, and except for the puddle that vanishes after a while, everything stays where it is, as a constant reminder of how to play the game. We basically have the tutorial from the menu, the tips, and the tutorials for the first time playing the stage, and the constant tutorial on the level themselves. I know comedy comes in threes, and you're probably expecting me to make a joke, but there's no joke here. I would understand having this for the first level, but it happens on every level. Again, it looks pretty much like a copy and paste job and an overkill at the same time. This could have been solved by moving the tutorial to the stage select and making it obligatory once. Well, it's correction time. The tutorial on the stage actually does vanish. I have the feeling that the game changed during my play sessions. It was wrong. Okay. The tutorial on the stage themselves vanish after a while. I still stand by the thingy that the tutorial should be obligatory once. That didn't change. The point still stands. I just want to correct. I think now the joke is on me. Well, let's move on with the video. Let's move on to the enemies, shall we? There are basically three types of enemies. The fighters, the rangers, and the trappers. Fighters will walk towards you and try to touch you, chipping away one of your 3 lives. Rangers will shoot some kind of projectile doing the same, and trappers will put something on the ground that can either have an effect on you, or will just chip away your health. This level only contains fighters and rangers, and they are pretty standard. There's the ranged skull, basically a zombie, the lizard man, which oddly reminds me of the lizard from Spider-Man, the wizard of the forest, that looks really cute and like Gandalf, and the sheep. They have explosives strapped to them, and they do exactly what you think they do. You shouldn't show this to PETA. This level is pretty straightforward. Skulls and sheep just move towards you and try to damage you. The wizard shoots projectiles like a shotgun, but there's enough room between the shots to just avoid it, so it's not a big deal. The lizard man shoots projectiles like a machine gun and the bullets move faster, but you can get out of the way quickly, so not a big deal either. Enemies take only 1 bullet to eliminate, so you would think the game isn't that difficult. The difficulty comes actually from the reload mechanic, since you have to stay on the acid puddles to refill your ammo bar, and the refill process takes 1 or 2 seconds, giving the enemy enough time to either close on you or lock you down and shoot. On top of that, those puddles vanish, forcing you to move towards the next puddle, which could empty your ammo bar, leaving you basically defenseless. In those situations, you can always try to use your dash, either in an offensive way by dashing towards the enemy and eliminating those pesky undead mutants, or you could use your dash defensively as a sidestep. Unfortunately, dashes aren't unlimited, and they are set on a 3 seconds cooldown, therefore forcing the player to really think when to use the dash and when to just move out of the way. Anyways, level 1 is pretty forgiving, there isn't a crazy amount of projectiles flying, fighters are pretty slow, and there are a lot of enemies at once on screen. There's one thing that doesn't really add or take away from the experience, but I think it is important to point out how lazy and genius this move is at the same time. The recoloring of enemies. In almost every level at a certain amount of points, a recolored enemy appears. This level has a red lizard instead of a green one, and every one of those recolored enemies take 2 bullets to be eliminated. Why is this a genius move, you might ask? I'm looking at it from a business viewpoint. Creating a new sprite would take more time than just recoloring it, meaning it would cost more development money. So why not recolor one enemy and make it stronger? Of course, stretching it would make it a stupid move again, but in Acid Nimbus, there is only one recolored enemy at every stage. It's genius and lazy. I love it and hate it at the same time. In the beginning I had problems with those enemies, but when you treat them like normal enemies, they lose the effect. Like I said, it doesn't add anything or take anything away from the experience. It's just a genius move. Level 1 is the most consistent level. Everything looks great and the music fits the forestry looks. It gives you the feeling that something is off, but you feel comfortable. I would say this is my favorite level and this is the easiest one at the same time, unfortunately. Next on the list is level 2, the Ice Lake. Here we have pretty much the same. We got new enemies with Skull Coronel acting as a trapper, and the gimmick of this level is the ground is made of ice. Moving is therefore floaty, and combined with the reload mechanic, the whole thing can be frustrating sometimes. It adds to the difficulty, but I don't really like it. This is probably my least favorite level since we have a werewolf, a zombie, and a snowman, and a Skull Coronel as enemies. These enemies just don't fit together. The first level had the combined theme of forest. You could find skeletons, animals, and crazy hermits in the forest symbolized by the skull, the lizard man, and the sheep, as well as the wizard. This level has the theme of ice. The only thing that fits is the snowman. And the recolored enemy on this level is the snowman, making it red. A red snowman. Why not a red werewolf or a red zombie? Anyways, the music is pretty sterile and slow, making the ice theme fit. And this is the last time I'm going to mention themes and music because you can already tell it's pretty good. I'm going to mention where it sucks though. Next stage. Stage 3. The Magic Swamp. This level is okay. Enemies, theme, and music fit again, and even though the floating movement is gone, its difficulty spikes again. The bestiary actually doesn't contain every enemy for this level, but I don't know if that is intended. Again, it doesn't make or break the game, it's just a small thing that I can't not notice for such a competent game. Stage 4, Wheat Fields. This level goes bonkers. You have 2 flying invincible enemies, there is an infinite shooting ranger, a second ranger that shoots really quickly at you, a type of fighter that just spawns endlessly and fills the screen at later stages, and a fighter that runs towards you and is always faster than you, and plus his recolored version. Level 1 to 3, I would say, have a consistent increase in difficulty. Level 4, just a difficulty mountain, because the next stage just drops in difficulty again. I don't mind the difficulty, but this level should come later on. Getting the 3,500 points is already hard work. Getting 10,000 points for the achievements was, well, not impossible, but really damn hard. Again, everything fits, I don't think I have to mention it again, so let's move on to stage 5, Vulcan Fields. The only difficulty here is the amount of projectiles, but if you learn to juke around, it will be fine. It will take longer than the usual level, but it's not as difficult as level 4, and it doesn't even come close to it. Level 6, the last free-to-play level. The Lab. This is the only level that doesn't have fitting music. The music is way too happy, but its saving grace is the boss, and even though the difficulty just drops yet again, I still like it. It's a very bare-bone boss with a predictable moving pattern, but I like it. Definitely something I didn't expect. I wish there was more boss fights or a boss fight for every level. First DLC level, level 7, the Dark Forest. It's basically level 1 again with new enemies and the Trapper. Level 8, the Factory. It's a gimmick level again like the Ice level. meaning that the stage is a hazard itself. This time you have wind balls that blow wind walls. Yes, you heard correctly, and what they do is basically just block your shots. Last level, level 9, the boxing ring. Again, a gimmick level that strips your ability to shoot and gives you boxing gloves. Yeah, you are in the ring, enemies spawn, and you beat them up. I like this level even though it's not really challenging. I think that is enough of the game. I think you got a good idea and overview of how the game is played and what you can expect from it. And the question remains, would I recommend it? You see, this game caters to my specific tastes. Good music, tight gameplay, and nice pixel art. I wish there was a story, because a story is one of the most essential parts of a game, but the game is so competently made that I can forgive that blunder. Except for one stage in which enemies don't fit, and in one stage in which the music doesn't fit, everything is really well made, and you see the love and passion behind it. I can't say buy it, but I would say to you to try the free-to-play version, and if you like it, to buy the DLC. You know, if we want to support the developer. I hope he brings some good stuff out soon, and it wouldn't be me if I hadn't something prepared. I won't be able to always interview people about their games, but I'm going to try, and this time I got the developer, so enjoy the interview. Welcome. Thank you for coming here, for having the interview. I just want to, for the people, just introduce yourself. Tell who you are and what you do for a living.
Thank you so much, Carl. I'm currently unemployed, but I'm looking for a job. And in my free time, I'm developing indie games.
So you're actually from Spain, right?
Yes, I'm from Spain.
So you speak Spanish, of course, but does your country have a big indie scene? Like a lot of indie devs working there?
I don't know much about the indie scene, but I know there are some meetings in Madrid called EDC,
okay,
where people share their knowledge and their experience about developing games. But I don't really know much about the indie scene.
Okay. Did you work with other indie developers?
Never.
Okay.
Never work with other people.
So Acid Nimbus is, I thought, is always a reference to atomic bomb, since the Nimbus is looks like a mushroom cloud, and clouds that are tainted by radiation are acidic. So is Acid Nimbus a reference to the atomic bomb?
Yes, in some way it's a reference to a disaster caused by humans.
Okay.
And yes, in some way it is.
That's cool. I was to ask myself, is this because the world is so strange? I thought, okay, that's probably something like that. So
that's something wrong with this world,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So
you guys it right.
Yeah. So even though I played through the game, the Acid Nimbus, and I enjoyed it, I couldn't figure out the story. I know something was wrong. So is there even a story, or are the stages just thematic? They have the thematic bridge, basically.
I have a friend that wants to write a story about Acid Nimbus. We want it to be cryptic and dark, to let the player, if she or he's really interested in the story, dig in, and not force the player to force him or her to watch the history.
Okay.
If he's really interested, then read about it, but it's not implemented yet.
Okay, that's cool. But because I'm like, there's something missing. The story is missing. So
True.
So let's talk about another thing which I found interesting, but actually about myself. So Acid Nimbus feels pretty much like Enter the Gungeon. You know that game?
Thanks. I'm glad it feels like that game, because it's a pretty good game.
But I assume that wasn't the inspiration. So what inspired you to develop the game?
Acid Nimbus lacks a lot of cool features, and it's pretty simple. But I think the game inspired me the most is, do you know Ubermosh?
Yes.
It's on Steam. It's pretty. It's a small indie game,
Yeah.
but pretty elegant and fast, and the sword mechanic feels so good. I love that game, and I think that's the game that inspired me the most. But also the acid mechanic, like recharging the ammo on the acid. I think I got that from Splatoon. You know that game from the Switch?
Yes. Oh no, I see it. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yes, my mind, I think, tricked me to. I didn't know it was from that game, but I think in some way I took it from that game.
Okay. So yeah, because I asked myself, what is this? Like, I'd never seen this. Seems pretty unique for a 2.5D arcade shooter.
True.
Okay. Because I already wrote my review, so I have a few things, but this, I hope I can tag on this interview so people actually know what I'm talking about. So
Nice.
Let's move on to the difficulty curve.
Yes.
It's almost like, I see almost like a mountain at like something like level 4, and then like the deep sea, because it starts relatively easy, it's get really hard, then especially it's get really, really hard, and then especially in the DLC just completely drops the difficulty, like it gets very easy. Was this like the intention, or did you just...
It wasn't. I think I fucked up a little with the difficulty. It was hard to balance for me.
Okay.
But I also want to release an overpowered weapon. You know the weapon with the DLC, like the one with the skull?
Yeah. I bought the
That's
DLC. Yeah, exactly.
so overpowered.
Yeah.
but it drops the overall difficulty and change the play style, because there's no much dependency on the acid pots.
Exactly.
And the boxing stage, it's pretty easy. If you stay in the center, it's so easy. But
Yes.
I didn't know that. I when I made the game, I didn't know it was it was the trick to be in the center. I was always in the corners, and it was so hard. And in some way, I discovered the trick that it was stay in the center, and poof.
Yeah, like I saw this, like, oh yeah, if you stay, at first I've tried to move, but then I realized, oh, they spawn like very slowly, so if they spawn
the same.
Yeah, if they spawned more rapidly, like 5 enemies at the same time, you probably couldn't stay in the middle. But okay, so
Yes.
I can see that. Like, that's something I can excuse, because I think like this is a pretty competent game, but there's something off, and this is like difficulty. If you develop another game, that would be like my point of like, if you have to look at that. So
yes, care more about the difficulty.
Exactly.
Right?
About how it like goes slowly up. So
yes,
as far
true.
as I know, you developed the whole game by yourself, except the menu art and the music. So
yes, I have the luck to have a good friend who made the music.
Okay.
But in the future, I want to do it by myself.
Okay. Because the music and the art, that was like the two like main factors. Like they sold the game.
Yes,
it's very competent, but the music
Thanks.
and the art, the whole package, that's it sells the game.
Thank you so much.
So the game is pretty much small in scope, like an indie game. What was the initial vision for the game? Do you want to expand the whole game?
I wanted to make my first game and make it the best I can.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed simple, and it was scary for me to start making a bigger project.
Okay.
Yes.
I would say you succeeded, because it's a very competent game. There are a lot of things that I see in other indie games, and you're like, basic stuff like options, you have that. Like music mixing, you have that. Like basic stuff. I would say really you actually succeeded in making the first game.
Thank you so much.
And
I really appreciate that.
yeah, I mean, I have some gripes, like some problems, but like in general, you could say this is a competent game. So there's only one boss, right? Like in the whole
Yes.
game, and it's pretty good. It's pretty standard, but it's good. It's competently made. Do you have like plans releasing like a new DLC or a new game that has more bosses in it?
Yes, that was the problem. It was very standard. I wanted to do more bosses, but I wasn't sure how to make them unique.
Mm-hmm.
Not do like 5 bosses, but if I wasn't capable because I lack experience with programming,
Yeah.
and I didn't know how to make different and better bosses, more spectacular and more unique. Yes.
Yeah. So
But
basically,
my intention was to make more bosses in every stage, to make one boss at least, but I couldn't.
so the whole thing leads us to the next question, because I would ask you, if you're a professional developer, you said you don't have um, enough experience, but
Yes.
are you planning to become a professional developer?
I plan to improve and learn like crazy. I want to do pretty good games, more
Because
complex with better
okay,
visuals, but it's a hobby for now.
okay, because you already are like on a very high standard. Because I play a lot of indie games, clearly, but you are like, this is very good start. This is like a very good starting line. If you improve
Thanks.
on that, that would be like, yeah, I can see good games coming from your side.
Thank you so much. I really want to do better games, but I don't know if I have the time.
Yeah, that's also that's always the crux, right? So what did you do before working in Acid Nimbus? Did you work like on other games before that?
I drop out from school and I work in some jobs like cutting meat and some easy jobs,
Okay.
but not much. Acid Nimbus, it's my first game ever. I didn't even make a game for practice or
Okay. That's
you know.
really impressive.
Thanks.
So you are, what are you doing now? Are you developing like another game? Will there be like an Acid Nimbus 2 or DLC for Acid Nimbus? What is happening right now?
I would love to develop Acid Nimbus 2 with co-op online, like to play with friends. Acid Nimbus, it would be so cool, I think, with items, with change or give abilities, more bigger and structured scenarios,
Okay.
like Left 4 Dead, but in pixel.
Oh
I
yeah.
think it would be so cool. But now I'm learning to develop in Unity.
Okay.
And I'm making a pretty small game about cutting maggots.
Mm-hmm.
So only for learning purpose.
Okay. All right. I think we're done here, and you can always like tell the people if they want to like your website or your Instagram. You can just plug it. Tell the people what they should follow, where they should follow
Okay.
you, and then
Um, Thank you so much for having me, Carl. I love the interview,
no problem.
and check out Carl's channel. It's pretty good idea to to check these indie games that no one knows, and it's so important that someone give him some visibility, and yes, and that's all.
Okay.
That's cool for me.
All right. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed this interview. The developer agreed even though he felt uncomfortable speaking English. Send him some love and consider buying his game. Wink wink. Like, sub, ring the bell, you know the drill. Take care of yourselves and have a nice day.